Yo, what is up, guys? It's Pedro here, and in today's video, I will be talking about Terry McLaurin and Adam Peters meeting during practice. What was said during that meeting? There is video, and we have, people, including myself, that did some lip reading and are able to find out some of what was said during that little meeting they had. We'll break it down, some other reports and updates about the whole situation. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button and that notification bell as well so you never miss a video. So, right now, this whole process is still going on. I know some of y'all are frustrated about it. You don't want to be hearing about Terry McLaurin and about all this stuff right now, but it is important. This is one of our star players, and this is still going on, and until it finalizes, we're gonna have to keep talking about it. And I think this was a important update, so we're gonna break down the video today, and then also give you guys some updates from John Kime and some other reporters as well, and I'll go over some practice details as well, so stay tuned for all of that. And yeah, so this was the video. They met during practice, and this was something that never happened during the off season so far. Them meeting during practice and it being like visually open to, not to the public, I guess, but to the media. Like, people were able to see it, be able to record it. And Terry's been there at training camp at least a few times that we've opened to the media. And maybe if he's not out there on the sideline, he's out in the training facility getting some rehab done for his ankle. And then also Adam Peters has been there probably fewer times than Terry, but he's been out there, and it just, they haven't been together. And so for them to have a conversation during this contract dispute is definitely something that I think is major. So I'll let you guys, I'll play it real quick so you guys can see what's going on, and you guys can maybe read the body language for yourself, maybe try to lip read yourselves. But that is the view that NBC Sports got. So shout out to News 4 Sports for that. So that was it. So from what I saw, the big, at some point around here, he said, "All right, cool." And then what I got out of it is, "I was gonna reach out to you," from Terry McLaurin to Adam Peters. I'll play it soon. It should be here soon. And if you just watch that back, you can see him say, "I was gonna reach out to you." That he's starting to say it right there. So that's very clear. He said, "I was going to reach out to you." In the beginning, he said, "Oh, cool." And then after that, there's been some speculation on the rest of what he said. There's a lot of people trying to lip read or use artificial intelligence to try to figure it out. But I think that's like the most concrete thing we got right there, is that part, and saying "I was going to reach out to you," which I think that in itself is big. It's Terry maybe not admitting to a mistake or anything like that, but basically saying, probably Adam Peters reached out to him or gave him an offer or something like that, or had a question for him, and he was waiting on a Terry response. So them meeting kind of brought that back up, and then Terry was like, "Oh shoot, yeah, I was going to reach out to you," and that's good. And it speeds up the process a little bit of their communication, things that they talked about maybe a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and now they meet and maybe they actually act on the things that they said. So Terry maybe will give feedback to whatever Adam asked for, or he just did it in this small conversation here. Regardless, people are saying the body language is negative, whatever. Terry's not super happy about the contract situation, but the fact that they're talking is really, really good news. And they can kind of get a sense of where the other person's at, where the other side's at on these contract negotiations. How close, how far are we really? And then also the fact that Adam Peters is able to do this without Buddy Baker looking over Terry McLaurin's shoulder, or whispering in his ear what to say and kind of just telling him what to do. I think that's huge. I think that's also very important that they got this one-on-one, even if I don't know how long it was. Maybe it was 10-15 minutes, maybe it was like 2 minutes. I don't know. My guess is it was a few minute conversation, and they were out there doing what they needed to do. And then Adam Peters afterwards was watching practice, which is what he should do, like looking at his players, making sure certain guys are at where they're at. The rest is up to Dan Quinn, but Adam Peters needs to know how good the team is and making sure that certain positions aren't weak, and just catching up with his evaluation on certain players and their future for the team. Obviously the games matter more, but the practices do matter for sure. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of the whole Terry McLaurin situation there, and you get to see those two, hash it out a little bit. And I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I know some people are going to be like, "You already did with the video," but that's kind of it with the conversation they had. I think it's really good news, regardless of what was said. Getting on the same page, or not even getting on the same page, but being able to understand the other person's side, or at least hear it, is big. And without Buddy Baker. And then here's a picture of Terry with Jaden Daniels on the sideline. Jaden's, uh, tired, kneeling down. Probably his team, they were doing the inter squad scrimmage, and his team is probably on defense, and he's just chilling there. And Terry McLaurin's in the hoodie right beside him. So that was cool right there. And then this was something from, I believe this was Kime. It was an ESPN article. I'm not going to go ahead and read it, but the league sources believe the Commanders could eventually come to an agreement at $28 million per year for Terry McLaurin. League sources also say that Washington doesn't want to pay McLaurin for his past performances, but instead how he'll produce at older ages. So the first part's cool. 28 would be great. I somewhat agree with the second part, but obviously what you did the last couple of years matters. I mean, that is part of the way you're able to get more money. If you really balled out the last couple of years, that does matter. Context does matter. If you had 6 years, because a team would hold it against you too. If you had 6 years of, or let's say in McLaurin's case, 5 years of 400 yards every year, and in the sixth season, you're getting, 1,100 yards, they would be like, you know what? Well, the last 3 years, you had, 2 seasons that were and then one really good season, and you're older, so we're going to pay you less. But now they're basically just saying, yeah, cool, you had a good season, but we're gonna also look at the last or the next few years of your age. I think it's a combination of both. Obviously, what you did in the past matters, and also your age and how they project you to play in the future matters as well. I think they need to, have a good balance there with those two things. It is what it is, but that's kind of my stance on the situation there. I do believe Terry deserves to get paid. $28 million is super reasonable. Super reasonable. I mean, just because the Steelers did it doesn't mean we have to. But 33 for DK and then 28 for Terry is a steal. And then Cortland Sutton, he got 23, so 5 more for Terry again. I think that would be a steal. That would be a really good deal for the Commanders. And then both sides hopefully are happy, and hopefully there's no damaged relationship. But that is it for today's video. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, hit that like button and that notification bell as well. And obviously subscribe. It all really helps out a ton. It's free. It takes a second. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.